Okay, this is how to create your own pattern for backgrounds, background textures, for package design elements, for layout purposes in Illustrator. And I'm beginning using a 24 by 36 inch canvas, which is vertically aligned. To do this and to be able to save my patterns, I want to use the swatches panel. Here it is. In Illustrator, the swatches panel can contain solid colors, gradients, and patterns. And down at the bottom here, you can see we also have, as well as swatches for patterns and gradients and colors, we can also show groups, or these little folders are groups. So to save and to save a color, just as a quickie reminder, right? I would create the color, I'd mix the color, maybe dial in the color, keep the color, round out those numbers, this 20, and click OK. And then I would drag that color from the swatches panel down where I wanted to put that. And here's the spot where I'll put that. To make a pattern, however, is surprisingly odd way of doing this. So in order to make a pattern, one thing that you might want to have around is a square. So I'm going to begin by clicking and dragging out. By holding the Shift key, I am making a square. However, the square wants to have no fill, and the stroke doesn't really matter so much, so I'm going to tell it no fill and a stroke of whatever, and now I have this square sitting here, which looks kind of odd. There, it looks a little better now. Okay, and then with this square selected, now that I'm zoomed in, I'm going to do this: View, Guides, Make. It's going to take this square and create a guide version of it. So I just see the guidelines, which are this light blue color. Right now, if I click on it, I can move it because I believe my guides are unlocked. No, nope, they are locked. So if I go to View and I look at Guides, I can see my guides are locked. Here's how I would get rid of that clear guides. Now it's gone. And again, even if this outline is black, it doesn't really matter. If the fill is white and black, that would work too. And I'm going to click and drag out with the rectangle tool, making a square, because pattern tiles in Illustrator are based on a square area. And then again, I'm going to go to View and go to Guides and choose Make Guides. And there are my guides. So that's the first step. Now, depending on the kind of pattern that you want to make, whether it's a random pattern or something that has to match up to the edges, you have to think about your content in a square, because that is the way Illustrator is going to be parsing it or placing it into any object that you want to fill with the pattern that you make. So to start out really simple, I'm going to go over to the Shapes tools and I'm going to use the Star tool. Before I start to draw a star, I'm going to change the stroke to none and the fill to orange. And I'm going to click and drag out a star. Alright, so if you're on the Shape tools, take a look up. Take a look up, please. If you feel like you're not finding your Star tool, if you arrange your palette so that you can at least identify here, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th tool down on the left side, and this one is here, the Shape rectangle, rounded rectangle, the ellipse, polygon, and star, and there's also a flare tool I'm not going to talk about right now, but this is the one I'm choosing. Okay, so there's my star tool. So I have one star in the square, and I want it to fit an even number of stars in the square. And I also want to make this really simple so that you understand what's going on here when it makes the pattern. So I'm going to place the star right on the edges. I'm going to press the Z key and zoom in, and then I'm going to click and select and line these up and zoom out. All right, so I know now that the tips of the star are on the edge. And if you bear with me for a second, I'm going to click on this star and press the Option and the Shift keys at the same time. And then I'm going to put these really close together like that, however I put them. Afterwards, I'm going to go Command D, which you may remember from last week, which is transform again. And now I have 5 stars that are aligned with each other, but not exactly aligned the way I want them to be with the box yet. Okay, watch while I'm doing this. Don't try and do it while I'm doing it. I'm recording the tutorial, so you can re-watch it, and I'll show you again. It's probably better to not try to do it while I'm showing you. So now I've selected everything, and I'm going to drag this over so that the tip of the star touches the edge. So this tip of the star touches, and that tip of the star touches the edge. And what about the space in between these? So if you zoom in and you look at the space in between, right here, these 2 stars, that is the space that I want to emulate half of on either side. So watch this logic here. I'm going to create a rectangle that touches from one point of the star to the edge. And then I'm going to change the color of that so I can see it. Okay, there is a view ruler tools that will help me show rulers. And I'm going to select a left ruler and click on the ruler and drag a guide into the center of that little rectangle. And now I'm going to essentially select this rectangle and cut it in half by sliding it over to the middle and cut it and zoom out. Please watch. This is graphic designer logic kind of stuff. I'm going to paste, move it over to move it over. This little spacer near the edge. I'm going to zoom in. Space bar, and slide that over and see where I am. Zoom for Z for zoom. And now I want to place that right up against the ruler guide and zoom out. It's so tiny, but it's really important. And let me just move these panels out of the way. Now I'm going to paste again. I'm going to press Z for zoom and click and drag over here, the edge. You can see it wasn't really all the way against the edge, and Command V, so that's going to paste it right in the center of my view, which is why I zoomed in where I wanted to be before I pasted. So it would be where I want it to be. And now again I'm going to place down some ruler guides, one on the left edge of that rectangle, and then Z for zoom and click and drag, and another ruler guide right on the right edge. And now I can see the margins that I need things to fit from side to side. So I'm going to create a selection around these stars. And again, I'm going to zoom in, lots of zooming. I'm going to nudge this over a little bit so it's coming right up to this edge of that star. Okay, it's not quite there, so I'm going to move it away and then move it back. That looks good. And now I have to zoom out, Command 0, zoom in, Z for zoom. And this is very tricky because you can't really see everything you need to see to do this. So please watch. I'm showing you something a little more advanced, and it does have to do with scaling. So I'm going to click the scale tool and then click on the corner of this star where it touches its spacer rectangle. And that is setting, Command minus, the position that I want to scale from. Now I want to zoom in, so hand tool, pressing the space bar, Command plus, okay, and space bar for hand tool. And now I'm taking the scale tool and I'm going to click and hold the shift key and drag till this left little point here comes right to that edge like that. Okay. So now at the either side of this, I have the exact same spacing on either side. So
when you dragged over to the other side, didn't that change the size in between?
No, it didn't, because I had clicked on the scale tool to size from this point, so it lined it up exactly where I wanted to. And the size in between, I see what you're saying. Did it change this space?
Yeah.
Ever so slightly, but not very, I don't think any real reasonable amount. So let's just see what happens, okay? I'm going to move these up again, just not right on the edge, and select and zoom out. Click and drag. Whatever the case, I know that they're equally distantly spaced from the edges. And probably what I should do is this. I will delete these, select these again, and move this down like so. And again, Command D, Command D, Command D. Now, in order to space these equidistantly from each other, because if I make this a pattern now, it's going to fill, you'll see weird gaps. Everyone understand, right? If I use this as a pattern, it's going to fill with these strange gaps that exist. So I really want to keep in mind the whole rectangle, the whole square thing. So now I can select all. And again, S for scale, and I'll click right on this point. And I'll click on this star and just drag down. And I'm eyeballing the distance from the edge. So this is just an educated guess. The background, I want to point out, this is a very simple pattern. The background is transparent. So if I put it over something, the background will become whatever I put it over's background. And then I want it to be should not be cut off. Here, let's see what it looks like right now. So I'm going to select all the stars, and I'm going to drag them over in one unit over into the swatches panel. And that makes my first pattern. So I'm going to click away, and then I'm going to create a rectangle. And this rectangle I'm going to fill with green, okay, with yellow, with magenta, okay. And then I'm going to copy that rectangle, Command C, and then I'm going to paste it, edit, paste in front, right on top of the other one. So it's hard to tell, but there are two. And when I click, there's the stars. Now, clearly they are bigger than we might have expected them to be. They are as big as we made them. But if I continue to, let's try that again. I'm messing myself up here. Cancel. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to delete. I'm going to get rid of this one too. I've been working in Photoshop all day, so I'm kind of wonky on my hands. So I'm just going to move these over here for now because I need the space. And create a rectangle that's larger and takes up more area. Select magenta, and again, see if I fill with the stars, it's got a transparent background. If I fill with magenta, it's completely magenta. So I'm going to do Command C, that's copy. Command F, that's paste in front. And I'm filling it with the stars. Looks pretty darn good to me. Like, can you tell where the edges of the pattern are? No. So that's not getting cut off. I mean, the pattern is always going to get cut off depending on what shape you put it in. But this actual stars from the pattern are filling perfectly fine. Another thing to recognize is that whatever you fill with the pattern, and if I use the pen tool to create a new shape, and I'll make like a boomerang kind of a shape. Whenever that shape that you create is expanded, it's almost as if you're revealing the pattern inside the object. So in a sense, in Illustrator, a vector mask, which Illustrator is a vector program, is, or a pattern is essentially a vector mask. So keep that in the back of your mind. So there's my airplane pillow boomerang shape with stars. Now, if I want to take that a little bit further, since I know that this pattern is working, and I want to keep a specific background in it, okay, I'm actually going to go all the way back to when I had that lined up right in the right spot, which was there, okay? With me? Everyone holding together? All right. Now I'm going to create a rectangle that goes from this corner to this corner, exactly the square that I need it to be. Boom. Fill that with the color. Let's go with blue this time. and cut it. This is a quick way, Command X, and then select all, and then edit, paste in back. You're pasting in back of what's selected. So that first pattern is still here. There it is. And now the new pattern is also in here. So if I create a new shape for that pattern to go in, now it's blue, now it has the pattern in it. Make sense? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, so now you know how to do it. Now, it's not exactly filling the way I might want it to, and I want to talk to you about scaling the pattern items in a minute. Hang in there, okay? So now here's the third pattern. So I'm going to make the stars alternate color, and now I'll speed up that process by selecting every other one here of the ones I want to change the color of. And wrong color, and right color, and right color. And it's really bright. Okay, and I'll change the color of this too, just because I can. Right. All right, select all, and drag it over, and now I have my third pattern. So, right now, if I create an area, two areas, and a third area, and fit them into the screen. I'm almost done with this little tutorial. I can now see what that's going to look like in terms of how the patterns seem to reveal themselves. Click, fill with pattern 1, click, fill with pattern 2, and click, fill with pattern 3. You see how they're all aligned almost perfectly because they're based on the first or main set of grid elements, which were the stars. So if I actually line them up right up against each other, they will create this very interesting kind of triptych seamless look. Okay, so that's a good thing to know about patterns. And if I select these all, now this gets weird. Okay, I'm going to select them all, Command A, and now I try to scale. So I'm going to scale from the left corner and click and drag. And what am I scaling? Well, if you notice, the stars themselves are getting bigger, which you might not want to have happen. You might want the shapes to get bigger and the stars to stay the same size. One thing is for sure, you need to know what it's going to do. So I'm going to undo that and show you where the setting is for your pattern resize. Last part of this, except for making some more fancy patterns. I'm going to go to Illustrator and go to Preferences, General. And under Preferences, General, here is a checkbox turned on next to Transform Pattern Tiles. That is actually probably not clicked on in your preferences. So if I click that off and click OK, and I move the content over and again scale it from the corner, now the boxes should get larger. More stars should be revealed and they should not change size. Okay, got it? All right, so whenever you're making your patterns, clearly the easiest way to make sure things line up at the end is to make sure that they're lined up at the beginning. But also, it can be very tricky to make a pattern that's not a symmetrical kind of a design. So I'll talk about that in the next little movie, so we'll just go ahead and save this one.